So in the last couple of sections, we've been talking about storage accounts, and now we've been talking about Azure files and file synchronizations. Now we want to talk about something that's very important, that we all know is important, that is backups. Now we obviously want to know that our servers within our server environments have backups. Our Azure VMs, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do backups for those. And even our files can be backed up in a certain way. So I'm going to start off by going back to my home, and the home of where backups are stored it's called a recovery services vault. This is backup and site recovery within the marketplace, but it is a recovery services vault when you create it. So I'm going to hit the create button. We have to give it a name, AZSJD New Recovery Services Vault. I'm going to put that in my pay-as-you-go subscription. We can create a new resource group or put it in one of our existing resource groups. Now the location is extremely important. We cannot just accept any location that we feel like. Our backup vault has to be in the same region as our Azure resources. So if you have resources in the Eastern region, you're going to want to create a backup vault in the Eastern region. Now if you have resources in multiple regions, then you're going to have to create recovery services vault in each of them in order for the backups to be stored. So you're going to end up creating one recovery services vault for each region in which you have either files or you have VMs or you have a SQL server in a virtual machine. So I'm going to create this in the Eastern US region because I know I have got a file server in that region. All right, so that created very quickly. Now if I go to the resource, I can see this is called a recovery services vault. And the recovery services vault has a couple of purposes within Azure. One of them is backup, which is what we're talking about. And the other is what's called site recovery or site replication. Now we haven't talked about site recovery yet, but the basics of site recovery is that you're going to take a server and it's going to replicate that into the recovery services vault. And if a disaster was to happen, if that server was to go down, you could quickly restore that recovery into a new region and then be up and running within 10-15 minutes. So recovery services vault is sort of like disaster recovery, whereas a backup has other purposes. You might need backups for governance purposes, right? You need backups for like that particular single server might go down and you want to be able to restore it quickly. Many different reasons of why you want to have backups. So let's start by going into the backup dashboard here. We're going to create our first backup. You start your backup with a goal. Now, Azure backups actually run either with Azure resources or on-premises resources. There is a backup service software that you can download from Microsoft's Download Center, install on your personal computer or on your servers, and it will basically take your data, your files from that server, compress them into a container, and put that into an Azure backup. And if you ever needed to restore the whole thing or individual files, you can use the Azure recovery service to get that. So, but let's talk about Azure services to start. And what kind of Azure services can be backed up? Well, as of now, you can back up an entire virtual machine, or you can back up an Azure file share or a SQL server in a VM. So let's choose Azure file share because we just created one. I'm going to click backup. So after a few seconds for it to find it, it did find my AZSJD files storage account that we created. So I'm going to choose that one. So basically it says registering storage account with Recovery Services Vault. This might take a minute. So let us give it a minute. So it successfully registered my AZSJD files storage account as a synchronization target. Let's choose our temp files, which is our only file share that we have. Now there's this concept of the backup policy, okay? We are sort of forced to create a new policy unless we had one that's existing. Now the backup policy is basically the schedule, and maybe we want to set this up so it backs it up daily. We can so let's say AZ new policy. At this point, we only have the daily option. We can choose the time of day. We can choose under which time zone that time is interpreted. And we can choose how long the backup is retained for. Okay, I'm going to leave the defaults. And so this is ready to go. If we wanted to, we can enable backup. And what that'll do is it'll back up our Azure file storage account every day for 30 and keep 30 days worth. So we can go back in time to at any point to yesterday, day before, 5 days ago, 20 days ago, etc. So we close that out. And if we go into the backup protected items backup section, right now it hasn't, we can see here there's no backups that have been done. We're going to have to let that run, obviously. Now it didn't take long. We only had the one file in our Azure Files account, and so we can see here that we've got one item backed up from our Azure file service. Okay, so that's worked. If we go into the backup infrastructure and we go down into storage accounts, we can see that AZSGT files is protected and that there's one item protected from that storage account. So that's how we back up. We can do the same thing for virtual machines, SQL Server in a VM.